The day my stepmother sold the house my mother built, she did not call me. She mailed me a form, 1 page, from a law firm 3 states away, with a little yellow tab that read "Sign here" and a cover letter that called it a simple release of a worthless expectancy. My name is Ellis. The woman selling my childhood home was my father's widow, Vivian. And this is the story of how she spent an entire winter proving, on paper, to a developer and a bank and a title company, that the house was absolutely hers to sell, which turned out to be the exact reason none of them could buy it. You have to understand what the house was. My mother, Claire, was an architect, and she drew that house herself before I was born, every joint and window and the long porch that caught the west light. She and my father built it over 3 summers on a rise above the river road, and she finished the last of it the year I turned 6. She died when I was 19, and for a long time the house was the only place her hands were still everywhere. Every room remembered her. My father used to say the walls were her real drawings, the ones that would outlast all the paper ones. He was right, and later, without ever meaning to, he would prove it in a courthouse. 7 years after my mother died, my father married Vivian. I was glad, mostly. He had been alone a long time, and she was warm at the table and good to him when his heart began to fail. I will not pretend it was simple. She had a way of talking about the house as if she had chosen the paint, of showing guests the porch as though she had thought of it. But my father was happy, and I was grown and gone by then, so I let it be. I told myself the house did not need me to defend it. I was wrong about that too, but not in the way I feared. My father died on a gray morning in March, and a week later we sat in his lawyer's office to hear the will. It was careful, the way everything he did late in life was careful, as if he had finally learned that a handshake was not enough. The house and the land, he wrote, were to go to Vivian for the term of her natural life, so that she would always have a home, and then, upon her passing, to my son Ellis and his heirs forever. Vivian heard the first half and smiled. I heard the second half and said nothing. She got a home for the rest of her life. I got the house for the rest of time. At the time, I did not fully understand that those were 2 completely different things. She never understood it at all. Here is the thing my father built into that sentence, and the thing Vivian never read carefully enough. When you own land the ordinary way, you own all of it, forever, and you can sell it, mortgage it, or leave it to anyone. But you can also cut that ownership in time. My father gave Vivian a life estate, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is the right to live in a place, use it, and enjoy it for as long as you are alive and not 1 day longer. What comes after, the rest of forever, is called the remainder, and my father gave that to me. A life tenant may sell what she has. But what she has is only her own life, measured in a house. She cannot sell the years after she is gone because those years were never hers. They were always mine. For 6 years it was quiet. Vivian lived in the house, and I visited less than I should have, and the river road stayed the river road. Then the developers came. The whole valley had gotten expensive, and our rise above the river was the best view for miles. A resort company wanted to tear the house down and put up 40 units and a clubhouse where my mother's porch was. They needed the land clean and whole and sold in fee, all of it, forever. And they found Vivian, alone in a house too big for her, and they told her what she wanted to hear. That it was her home, that it was hers to sell, that she had earned it. They offered her $2.1 million. I do not blame anyone for what a number that size does to a person who feels they were owed. Vivian signed a purchase agreement that promised the buyer full ownership of the house and the land, free and clear, at a closing set for the spring. She did not call a lawyer of her own first. She called the buyers. And somewhere in that office, a young associate was told to clear away the only loose thread on the title, a remainder interest belonging to a stepson 3 states away, who surely would take a few $1,000s to sign a form and disappear. That form is the one that arrived in my mailbox with the little yellow tab. The cover letter was a small masterpiece of gentle lying. It called my remainder a mere expectancy, a technicality, something that might never even come to pass. It offered me $5,000 for my signature, described as a courtesy, and asked me to return the enclosed release at my earliest convenience. It did not mention $2.1 million. It did not mention that without my signature there was no clean title, no sale, no closing, nothing. It was written to make me feel small and grateful. I read it twice, made a pot of coffee, and then I did the one thing they had bet their whole deal I would not do. I went and found the will. There they were, in my father's careful language. For the term of her natural life, 4 words that Vivian had heard as a gift and I had heard as a promise, and that the buyer's lawyers, in their hurry, had apparently not yet read at all. because those 4 words meant Vivian did not own the house. She owned a life estate in it, and nothing more. Whatever she signed, whatever she was paid, she could only ever hand a buyer the right to use the house for as long as she happened to keep breathing, and then it ended, and the land came home to me. You cannot sell forever when all you were given was a lifetime. I did not sign the release. I did something quieter. I recorded my remainder, in the county's own books, in ink, for anyone who cared to look. A sale like theirs lives or dies on one thing, a title search. Before a bank lends $2 million, someone walks into that same county office and reads every deed, every will, every recorded interest attached to the land, all the way back. For a few weeks, my stepmother and her buyer moved forward as if the ground were clean. Contractors were scheduled. A demolition permit was pulled. And then a title examiner, doing the boring, careful work my father would have loved, opened the will, found 4 words, and then found the fresh line I had recorded under them, and the whole thing stopped as if it had hit a wall. Because now it was on the record, in the county's own hand, that what Vivian could sell was not a house. It was the rest of one woman's life, and no more. I almost felt for the associate who had to explain it up the chain. If the buyer went ahead and paid Vivian and took her deed, here is what $2.1 million would buy. Not the house. Not the land. Only the right to stand in my mother's house until Vivian died. A thing lawyers call an estate for the life of another. It could be 40 years. It could be 1. No bank on earth lends millions against a house that reverts to a stranger on an unknown morning, and no developer builds a clubhouse he must tear back down the day an old woman passes in her sleep. The land they wanted whole and forever could not be delivered whole or forever by the only person offering to sell it. Vivian, furious and already spending money she had been promised, decided to force it. If the house was in her way, she would clear it. A crew arrived one morning to begin the demolition early, to make the land look ready, and a neighbor called me before the coffee was cold. This is where a life tenant learns the second half of the bargain. The law lets you live in a house for your life. It does not let you destroy it. Tearing down a house that belongs to someone else after you is called waste, and the person it belongs to after you can walk into a court and stop it that same day. I did. By that afternoon, a judge had signed an order, and the excavator sat on the lawn with its arm down, and my mother's porch was still standing when the sun went behind the hill. A developer will forgive many things, but not a title he cannot insure and a house he is forbidden to touch. The buyer withdrew and took its $2.1 million with it. The demolition permit was voided. The contractors were released. Vivian was left exactly where my father had placed her, in a house she could live in for the rest of her life and never sell, only now she knew it, and now the whole county knew it too. She had spent a winter proving to banks and lawyers and a judge that the house was hers to hand away, and every proof she offered only wrote my name more clearly under hers. Vivian wrote to me once more, and this time there was no yellow tab. It was angry, and then it was frightened, and at the end it was almost honest. She asked how I could let her believe for 6 years that the house was hers. I wrote back one time. I told her the truth, that the house had always been hers to live in, fully and for as long as she drew breath, and that nothing I did had taken a single day of that away. I told her she could stay in it until she was very old, warm in the rooms my mother drew, and that when she was gone it would come to me, exactly as my father wrote it, exactly as he meant it. A place to live is not a place to sell. The right to stay was never the right to keep. That was my father's rule, and I only had to enforce the half he trusted me with. The house still stands above the river road. Vivian lives there still, and I do not begrudge her a day of it, because that is precisely what my father wanted and precisely what the law protected, hers for her life, mine for all the rest. The developers moved down the valley and built their clubhouse on someone else's view. And the deed they nearly bought, the one that promised a fortune, would have been worth only a single life that was never theirs to spend. My mother drew a house that outlasted every paper anyone tried to write over it. My father drew one careful sentence that did the same. Together, they beat $1 million with 4 words and a lifetime. So here is my question for you. Vivian was promised $2.1 million for a house she was only ever allowed to live in. Who was the real thief in this story? The widow who tried to sell what was not hers, the developer who never read the will, or the father who saw all of it coming and answered it with one quiet line before he died? Tell me in the comments. If you want the next one, a brother who mortgaged land he only half owned and forgot what the word survivorship does the day a co-owner dies, subscribe, and I will tell you how that one ended too. These are the Vendetta Tapes. Nobody here breaks the law. They just finally read it.